What's up, guys? This is Dave from The Disorderly. I'm joined once again by Mr. Andrew Volpe. I can't say his name. I don't know. I've known him for 20 years, but I'm having troubles tonight, but we're just going to rock with it. So we're back again where we read a book, we talk about the film, we talk about the differences, we talk about why we liked one versus the other, what worked for us, what didn't work. This one's a pretty intense one, man. You know what I mean? So it's countless hours of preparation.
Yeah, I mean, we've been building this up for months and months.
Months. You know what I mean? We had to read. I read multiple books.
Yeah.
I reread The Shining, read Doctor Sleep, watched The Shining again for probably, I don't know, gazillion time.
Yeah.
And then we saw Doctor Sleep. So this one was pretty interesting because we were kind of curious to see how they Mike Flanagan I don't know if you want to call him a rising star director. I mean, he's I don't know, I feel like he's pretty established now, with Oculus, and he did, Gerald's Game for Netflix, the Stephen King story. He did, the Haunting on Hill House, right?
The Haunting on Hill House. I gotta say, I mean, he was doing, because Oculus came out, 7 years ago? That's
something like that.
Pretty good, trajectory.
Totally.
I hadn't heard of him until 3 or 4 years ago, and I mean, these are pretty fucking huge shoes to fill. So
totally. I mean, damn, bro.
Yeah.
You got Stephen King on one end. You got mom Stephen King. You got dad Stanley Kubrick. They hate each other, and they're just ready to shit on whatever you make. You know what I mean? So Stephen King is just sitting there behind his keyboard, ready to pounce on your ass. You know what I mean? For and hating every choice you make. So, this was going to be an interesting one because, Stephen King wrote a book, and then Stanley Kubrick decided, you know what? This sounds semi-interesting. I don't hate it, but I'm not really going to adapt this super tight. You know what I mean? He took the broad strokes. Famously, as legend goes, Stanley Kubrick, he did Barry Lyndon in 1975, and it just bombed, bro. You know what I mean? It bombed famously, right? So,
and that was his one movie in that 10-year period too.
Yeah, it's you know what? We gotta go take one. He didn't have Transformers 4 to go. You know what I mean? He couldn't do a Marvel movie. He couldn't do Ant-Man and the Wasp. You know what I mean? He had to go find something, right? So he's going through, and he's like, you know what? Let's do something commercial. You know what I mean? I gotta make some cash here. I got a family. You know what I mean? So let's figure it out. I'm a goddamn legend, but Kubrick's got to eat. You know what I mean? So the Coob's got to eat. So he goes, all right, well, I'll just start reading every horror novel that I can find. So he starts reading horror novels over. He's diving through them. He's in his office like a miserly old bastard that he was, and he's just reading these books. And if he didn't like it in the first few pages, he would throw it at a wall. And his secretary would tell the story that she just got used to the sound of books being thrown at a wall, and then noticed that he hadn't thrown a book against a wall in a few hours, and went and checked on him, and he was reading The Shining. So he made it through. It passed the Stanley Kubrick, throw test. And I want to know, what books did he throw? You know what I mean?
Someone do that
Dean
podcast, Koontz, right? It's all.
Huh?
I'm sure it was all Dean Koontz books, right?
Probably. F.U. Koontz.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, Koontz did not abide. You know what I mean? So, so Kubrick, he makes The Shining. It is just, he decides to kind of co-write it. Forgive me, I can't remember her name. Is it Stone, man? I'm trying to remember her name. But she'd written another book, and Kubrick and her kind of became friendly, and they kind of adapted it. King wrote a screenplay, I think, and Kubrick was like, you know what? Nah. I'm not going to use your screenplay, and I'm not even really going to collaborate with you. I'm not interested in it. I'm going to do my own thing. So that kind of got it rocking and rolling, you know what I mean? Where the the hate train. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
So Steve King, famously hates The Shining. Famously kind of hates everything Stanley Kubrick did. Where it's like, that is just a tough one to win, man, because people, there are people that love The Shining as their favorite film of all time, not their favorite horror film, my friend. You know what I mean? They just love The Shining as like an incredible film, and it's just living out there, and it's going to live long after Stephen King has written his last,
his last tome
sequel to The Dark Tower or whatever. You know what I mean? Right. So yeah, it's like, imagine it's like Brad Pitt banged your girlfriend in high school, and you just went around telling everyone how much you hated Brad Pitt, and everyone's like, yeah, well,
too bad, he's still Brad Pitt.
Yeah, it's Brad Pitt though, dog. You know what I mean? So, just to kind of circle back. So let's talk about it. So Stephen King wrote a book. Stanley Kubrick made a movie. Okay. And then in 2013, Stephen King decided to write a sequel to his book, not really taking into account The Shining. Okay. Mike Flanagan is going to adapt Stephen King's novel, which is called Dr. Sleep. And he goes, you know what? I'm seeing the writing on the wall here. I have to basically kind of make a sequel to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. If I make a straight, I can't adapt Stephen King's book. It's vastly different. There are major differences. Just kind of want to run through a few of them. But, before we get into anything, I don't know why you're listening to this, but spoilers, baby. Spoilers on everything. You know what I mean? It should say it in the titles. It should say it around. But, we're going to get into book spoilers for both books, film spoilers for everything.
We love to spoil everything here at the
Screw the innocent.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So, and I think the amount of spoilers or the amount of differences between the Shining, it could be its own podcast. We'll touch on them. We'll go in through them because they're hugely impactful into Dr. Sleep and the film and everything like that. But kind of the biggest one is that, the goddamn Overlook Hotel burns down in Stephen King's novel. It does not in Stanley Kubrick's film, right? So the entire third act of Dr. Sleep, the film, takes place in something that doesn't exist at all in the book.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So we'll circle back to that, but you know what I mean? I just it's you can't kind of talk about one without the other because everything is kind of relying on it, but you know what I mean? There's just kind of getting into it. What did you think? Did you start to see any of these kind of differences? Anything?
That was basically what you just described. The whole differences between the Shining book and film and this new book and film, and the way Mike Flanagan basically has the almost like impossible problem of trying to take all of those things and kind of feed them into a coherent narrative. And it actually, it wasn't, I'm glad that it was its own thing, and I enjoyed it, and he did a very competent job doing all those things. And honestly, as complicated as it sounds, like, he didn't seem like aside from the third act, all the stuff with the Overlook, he really was fairly faithful to the source material, as much as you could be. Like, it seems like a lot of stuff had to be cut, and that was kind of some of the stuff that I took issue with a lot. But and the Overlook stuff, I had probably the most mixed feelings with, because in certain ways it was the most interesting part of the movie to me, because it's the stuff that felt like The Shining, and the stuff that wasn't in the book. Like the thing was, at some points the movie felt so faithful to the book that I was kind of like going through a checklist in my head of like, and then we go to this part and this part. So that was the one point where I felt like I didn't really know where the movie was going. But it did seem like he kind of just connected the pieces, like, to make this new narrative fit in the Stanley Kubrick universe. Like, the Dick Halloran is alive in the book, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
and he kind of has this prologue early on that where he's the mentor to Danny, and he kind of teaches him how to combat the ghosts and lock them away in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very simple solution to that is hey, Danny can see ghosts, let's make Dick a ghost in the movie where he had died in the previous installment. So like a lot of scenes like that, they were able to play out and just change a thing here or there to make them fit in that spot. And then, so I thought it was very inventive in the end to kind of plug in Stephen King's original ending to the book to in this new sequel with Danny instead of Jack Nicholson or instead of his dad being the one to blow up the mansion. But it kind of annoyed me. I felt like that I would say my biggest beef with the movie is they kind of drop a lot of the AA stuff, which I actually felt like was kind of the heart of the book. Like I liked the book a lot, and there was probably certain things about it that, at least intellectually, I'd say were probably weaker about it. But I liked the heart of the story enough, and I really admired that Stephen King. Like the movie feels weirdly organic because it's really its own story. It works with the Shining universe, like it makes sense. But I'm glad that the whole book wasn't just like going back to the Overlook or another haunted house. It's like the concept of psychic vampires I found very interesting, and that really could have been its own thing. But the tying the two together, it almost feels like two movies running into each other, kind of, in a fascinating way. But the thing that I think the movie really loses, and it's really just because of time, is I think, once again, the villains are awesome. Like, I forgot the woman that plays Rose the Hat, but she's Rebecca Ferguson.
Rebecca Ferguson?
Yeah,
I
she's
think so.
fantastic. So I found them all pretty compelling, but I think because, I don't know if it's just because in the book you kind of get more of Danny's inner monologue, and I think in the movie they had a lot of the stuff they had to cut is like Danny hitting rock bottom, and a little bit more of his hospice stuff, and I feel like the thing that made Danny compelling in the book was basically his alcoholism and his struggle with all of his childhood trauma. But when you take all of that stuff away, he really doesn't have that much of a character. And so since I think they took a lot of that away in the movie, I found the character in the movie less interesting. Like, I thought Abra was pretty cool, but Danny felt like a little bit of a blank slate. And though I thought Ewan McGregor was pretty good, like, I didn't totally understand all of Danny's motivations. And the thing was, the thing at the ending, in the Shining book, it sounded like, I've never actually read the book, but I've done some research on it, and it seemed like, to me, it would make more sense that, Jack Torrance, blowing up the mansion at the end, is kind of like almost him being consumed by his alcoholism. It makes sense that he would sacrifice himself because he's also kind of dying. Like, he can't make it past this addiction. So Danny doing that, like, the thing I liked in the book is the whole book is about Danny growing beyond that and kind of, like, learning to heal from that and using his power for good and all this other stuff. So it just felt like him suddenly turning into Jack Torrance came out of nowhere, like him getting possessed by the ghosts and everything. Like, it felt like that was more from a generic horror movie, and the rules of that felt like it didn't feel like it made sense thematically, really. So yeah, basically the stuff at the end of the movie I thought was kind of fun because that's where you get a little bit more of the popcorn moviness, and it is nice that once again, while I like that so much of the movie is original, I do, if you're doing a Shining sequel, I feel like, you gotta have some of that Kubrick stuff in it.
Yeah, I mean, the fan service is there, but yeah, I feel like it was weird watching you know, like, because they, they talk about one part, King in The Shining, he talks a lot about how Jack's, because the Shining is primarily kind of told from like Jack's perspective. It's his story, you know what I mean? There's Danny is kind of a little bit more of a minor character. Wendy's a little bit more than she is in the movie, but it's all about how Jack is struggling, kind of facing the pressures of he's more relatable, I feel, in the book, just because you can kind of understand, he's kind of a hot-tempered guy. He struggles with alcohol. He's been fired from his job. He's kind of taking a desperation job from another kind of alcoholic friend, kind of pulled some strings and called. And Ullman kind of talks about this in the movie where, he's like, oh, our people gave, spoke very highly of Jack here. And but when Ullman is interviewing him in the office, that's a huge part of the book of just kind of, of kind of the debt that Jack feels like he's kind of owed to his friend Al, who's kind of he's in a weird I'm trying to remember their exact situation, but he's kind of like not it's sort of like a sponsor, but like kind of like he's in some sort of weird kind of like not mentor-mentee relationship with, but like he's kind of helping him out of a jam. But Al's like he ran over a kid on a bicycle, and Jack knows about it. It's something strange, right? Where they're tied into this weird thing together. But Jack is like a very weird, kind of interesting character in the book where he kind of feels like he's and it's not really touched on in the movie, you know what I mean? Where like he's kind of, he's trying to figure, he feels this pressure. I think as we get older too, like it's easier to kind of feel this, like what am I doing with my life kind of feeling that he's got, where he's trying to he wants to be a successful writer. He wants to be like a published writer, and he kind of has published like smaller things in magazines or whatever, but he's kind of, struggling to kind of make his big break. And then he has like a play that he's trying to finish. And, but it's really strange. I think he talks about like, I'm trying to remember the details, but it was like, it's about like a pedophile that is like trying to come like work his, like he's out of prison and he's trying to live like a normal life, but he's a pedophile, but it's supposed to be sympathetic toward, you know what I mean? Like it's very strange. It's like, yeah, that's not going to be a popular one. So like, you know what I mean? And he kind of discovers, as he's working at the Overlook, he wants to kind of do a history of the Overlook. He kind of discovers all of the weird seediness and the gentleman, I'm trying to remember his name, but the guy with a cracked open head who says like, lovely party, isn't it? Is that Dermot? He's the guy who kind of owns the hotel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he's kind of the owner, but I mean, he had kind of, in the book it's described like, once he lost like $3 million, he basically had to like sell it. So it's changed hands a lot. Like the mobsters owned it for a little bit. Like and he wants to write kind of like the weird creepy history. He wants to do a book, like a tell-all book about like the history of the hotel. He finds all these weird documents. He finds like creepy letters, like up and stashed away in the hotel and up in the attics and stuff. And Ullman kind of calls him and just demands that he cease and desist. Don't write anything. I don't want any. I don't want any problems. Blah blah blah. And so that kind of like further. So Al, his friend, he's like, hey, do not call Ullman, don't talk about this stuff. Like, this is your last chance. Like, you have to, I have you under, you have no leverage. You know what I mean? Like, don't do anything without my say so kind of a thing. And so like that kind of starts his like fall into craziness. And what's weird in the Kubrick film, he had like some subplots that he wanted to get into, but he decided to drop, where he kind of finds the scrapbook with all this weird old history. And there's one where Danny finds it and then starts speaking to him. But there's one, where Jack kind of discovers it. But for whatever reason, it's never really brought up in the film. But if you look at like the typewriter scene where he's kind of working and Wendy kind of first goes up to him, and he tells her to like get the F out of here, kind of a thing. Like you can see this giant open scrapbook like just sitting next to him, but it's not really explained or mentioned. So that's what they were talking about when he's as his kind of writing project. But they I feel like they talk so much about how like, the acorn doesn't fall far from the tree. Where a lot of, a big chunk of The Shining, like he devotes to kind of like how abusive his asshole father is. You know what I mean? Where he's like a drunk, drunk who beats his wife, and he hates that and how horrible it was and how traumatizing. But then he kind of falls into those same footsteps too. You know what I mean? So, how just like Danny kind of falls into them with Jack. You know what I mean? Where they both kind of end up becoming alcoholics and violent to the extent that Danny doesn't get married and have a kid, but is kind of getting into fist fights and stuff. And
I think
he
clearly
jokes
all the bar fights. Like he clearly has that mean streak.
So he like smashes a guy's face in, and then I think in the bar, and when he's in the scene where he's talking about hitting rock bottom and he's like bashing a guy's face in with a pool cue or a pool ball, he says like take your medicine. I think he says like take your medicine as he's hitting the guy, right? And that's a big part of the Shining book. So that's how he kind of worked that in. As Jack is running around trying to and that's something that Jack's father did. So Jack's father would beat the kids and his wife and say, take your medicine, take your goddamn medicine, that you'll take your medicine like a man, you know what I mean? Oh, wow. And so that's something that Jack, it's a phrase that Jack uses a lot in the book of chasing around Danny. You know what I mean? So a lot of like in the Kubrick film, you don't see him, I don't think he says the line.
Yeah.
But he says it in the bar in Dr. Sleep when Danny is talking to Jack. I think he says it again.
Interesting.
Where Jack says like, you take your kind of egging him on, trying to get him to drink that drink. He's like, take your medicine, kind of talking about how, it's the cure all and stuff. Right. And I think there's like that weird line where he talks about like, I don't know if it's Kings or whatever, but it's like you go from like a college educated man to a screaming ape in like 3 seconds, where just alcohol. I mean, King famously, super alcoholic. You know what I mean? Like drug addict, alcoholic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is the glory days of Stephen King. You know what I mean? Where like I can't even imagine what he's getting up to. He wrote the book in 4 months.
Well, wasn't he basically living the Jack Torrance? Wasn't he taking care of a house in Colorado, or he was living in Colorado Springs for a period?
No, so he was living in Boulder. So Ash and I used to live in Boulder, okay, like a couple years ago, and we went up to the Stanley Hotel, which is so in the 70s. Apparently, I don't know. This can't possibly be true, but apparently legend has it that he spun a globe or just pointed directly at anywhere just to move his family so that he could go somewhere to write, which seems insane. I can't imagine he would actually do that. And his finger landed on Boulder, Colorado. So they moved to Boulder, Colorado, and they go up into Estes Park is like kind of up in the mountains. You know what I mean? It's up there. You know what I mean? So, it's probably, I don't know, maybe like 45 minutes, maybe an hour. It's close to like Golden, Colorado, I think. It's where like the Coors Brewery is. It's kind of in that general area. And it's this old hotel, the Stanley Steamer. I think the inventor of Stanley Steamer, I'm trying to remember his name, Stanley, but it's the Stanley Hotel. And he built it because he was a rich inventor kind of guy. And he built the hotel as like a luxurious getaway for kind of his rich friends. He wanted his rich friends to come out to Colorado to hang out with him. And I'm trying to remember if he built it for himself or for his son or whatever. But there was some medical tie-in where he lived on the East Coast, and they were telling him, "Hey, man, you need to." This is back in the day, where they're like, "Go find that
sickly,
good."
He needs to get fresh air or something.
Something weird like that, right? So it might have been even for him, might have been for his brother. I'm trying to remember, but they go. He builds this hotel up in like the Colorado, up in the elevation. You know what I mean? It's up there. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of builds this hotel. It's semi, I guess, successful. I don't. It's a lovely little hotel. Like we went up there. We did the tour and everything. It's really cool. Like I recommend it. And it's all like The Shining out now. You know what I mean? But it's not. It's like tastefully done.
Mm-hmm.
You don't feel like you're at like Knott's Berry Farms or something. Like, you're not at Universal Studios where it's just
They
hacky
don't have
and bullshit.
Jack Nicholson guys like come up and scare you for
No,
$5.
they just no, exactly. Like a lot of people are there for the Shining tie-ins, right? So King famously, he went up to the Stanley Hotel. They were packing it up. I think he stayed like October 30th or something. So like the day before Halloween or whatever, he was there, with his family. But kind of like the setting was similar to kind of how it is in The Shining, right? Where it was just like bare bones kind of seasonal staff. There were no other guests. They were the only people in the hotel. That would be in itself kind of creepy, and he was just wandering around. He famously stays in room 217, which you can go see. Like, you can go see the Stanley Hotel, go to the Stanley Hotel, you take the tour, they'll show you room 217. It's like, it takes, like, people want to stay in room 217, of course, and it takes like years to get an appointment or a reservation rather, to stay there. But he famously kind of had like, I guess, a nightmare where, if I'm remembering this correctly, he either kills his family or his son is like brutally murdered and like swallowed by like one of those big old timey fire hoses that have out in buildings like that.
Right.
It's with like these big brass things
like
on it or something.
Stuff on?
Something weird. I don't know, man. You know what I mean? So he was just, they take you around. He's like, this is where Stephen King, he came down and played pool by himself one time. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, cool. But he kind of was like, holy shit, what if I wrote a book about, a creepy, evil hotel,
Mm-hmm.
And this, Stanley's nice, man. You know what I mean? It's old for sure, but it doesn't feel too creepy. It's kind of fun,
Yeah.
I recommend it. If you guys are ever out there, go check it out. But, that's kind of where he kind of got the inspiration, but, Stephen King out there doing God knows what, smoking, drinking.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean?
Like, both I never read the first book, but like, it sounded like, it was one of his more like personal stories, like,
introspective ones.
I mean,
totally.
He is basically supposed to be Jack Torrance, and I always assumed one of the reasons why he hated the Kubrick version so much was because, in the Kubrick version, like, something seems really wrong with Jack Nicholson, like, right away, like
right away.
Yeah, like, before the movie starts, and he's I wouldn't call him, like, sympathetic. He's a fucking maniac from go. So, like, I don't know. I feel like I always kind of figured that probably had a big factor into his dislike of the movie, right?
Yeah, because I think, they went out and tried to get a few different people. I think Robert De Niro was up for it, and Robin Williams was up for it.
Man,
and
it's so
and
hard
they,
to picture.
Dude,
can you imagine the world where fucking Robin Williams was Jack?
Is running around with a axe trying to kill his family. I can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it'd be kind of funny, but he was up for it. Didn't get it. They went with Jack Nicholson, who kind of like, I guess, I don't know. I don't know. He probably wasn't a mega star at this point, but he was probably like,
he was definitely super well respected,
getting there,
because he had a lot of Oscar stuff in the 70s. Like, he had like 5.
When was Chinatown? Was that before this?
Yeah, no, that was before that.
Before,
I think that was like same year as Godfather. So like, yeah, mid 70s, I think.
Yeah, no, it's just interesting things, you know what I mean? So kind of just, I don't know, I want to just dig into a little bit of the differences, just to kind of run them down, because some of them kind of, they get into it, but Halloran being one, the Halloran Dick, Scatman Crothers, that's a pretty big one, man, because he in the book really kind of spends more time with Dick and kind of helps explain The Shining a little bit more. Like, Danny is an unreliable narrator, you know what I mean, of kind of trying to explain how The Shining works. So King kind of uses Halloran as like here's an adult explaining like how the shit actually works. But Kubrick doesn't really go into it too much.
Kubrick likes
you know
to
what I mean?
leave it pretty vague. It seems like most of it is like even Danny's little finger thing, like the whole
Right.
that's all explained more in the book, right?
Um.
Or the covering his eyes
Yeah.
thing. Like I remember he covers his eyes in the movie to like whenever the ghosts appear, and isn't that something in the book like that isn't in the movie that they say, hey, cover your eyes
And they'll be gone.
yeah.
Yeah. And when you open your eyes, like, count to three. Like Dick, like, kind of coaches them and says, like, they're just pictures in a book, Doc. You know what I mean? Like, they
Right.
don't exist. They're not really there. They're just pictures in a book. And it's like, yeah, dude. But to Danny is like Luke Skywalker. You know what I mean? He's picking up the vibes. You know what I mean? So like things are touching him. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, Dick doesn't quite have the same connectivity to the Overlook that Danny does, right? So, I mean, Dick is working there, presumably living there or nearby, right? So it's like, can you imagine working in that goddamn hotel if you're being haunted?
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So Dick is obviously able to cope with it, where Danny is like immediately, preyed upon.
Right.
So that's one thing that they do kind of talk about. I feel like more in the book than the film, where in the book it's very clear that I feel like it's very clear that Danny is kind of more the target of what the hotel wants.
Oh, the Overlook.
Like they want,
craves
yeah.
him.
Like Danny is, yeah. And so in Doctor Sleep, I feel like the novel they talked about how, or maybe it was even the Shining novel where Dick Halloran kind of compares Danny to like a giant battery, you know what I mean?
Right.
Where they just want to eat him up. They just want to pull on his energy and ingest him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where Jack is just kind of he's like a tool. They just manipulate him into,
Trying to get him,
yeah, it's like they bully him, you know what I mean? And where the Grady character, basically in the book, they get into it with, the bathroom scene where he's kind of challenged. But basically they call him a pussy and just a bully that, like, are you going to do your job, man?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you going to take care of your family? I don't believe you. Are you sure you can handle this? Can you do this? Like, they kind of like, it's a weird like machismo, like macho bullshit thing where they kind of like goad him and bully him into killing his family. To try to convince him he wants to keep this job to provide for his family. But it's like, in order to keep the job, we need you to kill your family. You know what I mean? So it doesn't really make sense. And I think, like, as you go into it in the book, you're like, wow, yeah, this shit doesn't make any sense.
But is he just like losing his mind at that point where
he's losing his mind? But it's clear, kind of more so in the book, that Danny is the main focal point of what they want, right? So they want to manipulate Jack into thinking that he's the one they want, and he has such an incredible ego that he can't accept the fact that he's the one they want. And they talk about this more in the book where where Jack kind of doesn't understand why he's not the main one, and Danny kind of realizes this. And it's a little bit more introspective, and at the end of the film they kind of talk about how Jack believed that he was really the prize, but really it was Danny all along, you know what I mean? So they preyed upon his ego and wanted to be accepted and wanted to be a part of it, and manipulated Jack into kind of going crazy and doing his whole thing.
Interesting.
But yeah, so it's a weird thing. And then Dick surviving, Dick in the book, he survives.
Yeah.
He does get attacked by Jack because Jack is running around. The axe and everything like that
mallet,
is
right?
Yeah, it's a roque mallet. You know what I mean? So it's like a big like croquet mallet. So he's running around. He hits him, and he beats the shit out of Wendy with the mallet. I mean, he beats her like her ribs broken. Wendy basically in the film walks away like untouched.
Yeah.
But in the book, she gets the shit beaten out of her with a mallet. You know what I mean? Her back is janked up. Her ribs are broken. I mean, she is really messed up. Halloran gets attacked. They kind of survive. They're able to survive and escape. Where in the movie, Scatman Crothers, he took one right to the goddamn chest. You know what I mean? He takes an axe to the chest. There's no coming back from that.
Yeah.
Which is huge because Scatman Crothers and the whole epilogue of the book basically is kind of him helping Danny adjust, and they kind of, they, I can't remember, was it Carolina or Florida or New Orleans? I'm trying
I
to
think
remember
it's
where they end up.
Carolina, or it wasn't Florida. It's somewhere like tropical.
Right.
I think it was Carolina.
Yeah. So, I don't know, but basically they kind of relocate, and Dick is away somewhere, kind of, he's at a new job, he's cooking, you know what I mean, and they kind of invites them to come stay or something, or she's working there as a waitress. I mean, I can't remember,
he starts
but
seeing the ghost lady from the Overlook in his bathroom, and that's when he comes down and teaches him about the lockbox, right?
yeah, that's kind of in the beginning of Doctor Sleep, right?
Oh,
Or
yeah,
no?
yeah. But, okay, so he's, like, coaching him at the end of The Shining? Like, they have, like, a little...
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so he's like pretty goddamn like instrumental, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
in kind of like, helping him kind of kind of get situated and squared away and all that stuff, and then it leads right into Doctor Sleep. That's why like I reread The Shining and then started Doctor Sleep immediately, so I'm losing track of like which one was where. But yeah, he's like a huge component of arming Danny with the ability to handle the ghost from the Overlook. He's like, Mrs. I'm trying to remember her name. God damn it! But it's like, oh, she found me again. Oh, she finally found me. Oh, I'm losing it. And she, gives him the whole lockbox analogy. I want to build this box in your mind. I want you to know how it smells. I want you to know blah blah blah. In the book, I think it's like it has a key code, so it's different than kind of it's a very simple shitty box in the movie. You know what I mean? A cute like old box, but in the book, I think it has like a key code and everything. It's a little bit more like modern.
Yeah, modern for 1980 or whatever.
Yeah, which is weird. Kind of given you would think it'd be the other way around,
Right.
but just kind of gives him this power, and then in the film, he just kind of, isn't as involved, or he kind of speaks to him. Is there a scene where the gentleman from Alias and Lost is talking to him as a child? Does he come back and teach him how to do it as a ghost?
He comes back as a ghost. But it's one of those things where they don't reveal it until it's like they show him standing behind Danny, and then they cut away, and then they cut back, and he's suddenly gone, kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah, and then later on when they have him kind of come back again, when Danny is an adult, that whole scene really like just weirded me out. You know what I mean? Because I could buy how they did it in the book with kind of the dying grandmother. It's Abra's dying grandmother, or no, it's the French lady in the hospice that's dying.
Yeah.
And Dick like possesses her momentarily and is able to like channel himself through this dying woman as like a gateway.
Yeah.
And kind of like has some like quick words of advice on how to deal with this, right? But just like conveniently having him like, oh, he's a ghost. Oh, hey man, what's up?
Yeah.
Haven't seen you in a while. Like that it seems so odd to me. You know what I mean?
It felt a little like kind of plain. Like I feel like I try to like stylize it a little bit more. Like at first, because the first time they showed him, it's like Danny walked into the room and you just see a figure in the shadows and you can't really see who it is. And I almost wish they kind of kept it like that. Like if you don't really like, I think it was just more fan service. Is like, you want to see Dick Halloran and we have to work him in and he's dead. So we just have to, like they wanted one more scene with him. And there was one aspect where I did like, there was a 2-shot of Danny and Dick, and they had it's like they were both in profile, and Danny had light on him, but Dick didn't. Like he didn't have light where light should be hitting him. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but I think they really should have just kept him in shadows, or in earlier scenes when Dick was talking to Danny, like when he was bottoming out at that chick's house with the baby and the cocaine, like they kind of showed him in the distance out of focus. Like if you're gonna do that, that would probably be as far as I would take it. I personally do agree. I think it'd be much cooler if it was coming his voice coming from a old lady's body in the hospice. Like I wish there was a little bit more hospice in the movie, because I feel like that was actually a very important part to his character, and I felt like a very cool use of his power for good too.
Totally. Did you know that Stephen King stole that goddamn idea about the cat from a real life like news story?
Oh, really?
Apparently there was a goddamn cat that would
wow.
like the Grim Reaper go around and just climb on people's beds and then they died. Or he's like, oh, he sure can pick them. You know what I mean? Like, that's real. Like, Stephen King borrowed that from real life.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So just for all you, Stephen King is an imaginative genius.
Didn't
He's not above ripping off Good Morning America.
He didn't he do that movie Cat's Eye, where it's like
Yep.
yeah, like, there's that old wives' tale about cats will steal your baby's soul in their sleep or something.
But the cat ended up protecting the kid, right? Wasn't the gremlin troll monster trying to? It was like, and the cat protects the kid.
Yeah, it's like the cat takes the blame, but it's actually a gremlin in secret.
It's always gremlins.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I mean,
just blame everything on the gremlins.
Why can't it be a unicorn or something?
Nah. It's always that thing creeped me out, dude. Back in the day. Yeah. Was it claymation? How do they do that?
No, it was definitely a dude in a suit on a giant.
Oh set. Yeah, on a giant set. I remember it being like horrible,
too.
Right? The books are giant, and he's climbing on like 20-foot books and stuff.
Yeah, and then you can do. They'd have some shots where it would be like. Who was it? It was Drew Barrymore and or the cat, and like chasing after it, and they do that rear projection thing where it's like a guy in a suit on a set, but they just project Drew Barrymore like movie theater screen sized large behind him. Yeah, this is a pretty good movie.
Shout out to Cat's Eye, one of my
underrated,
semi favorite. Yeah, it's an underrated film.
80s classic, I guess.
Yeah, if you hear any like disturbances in the background, we adopted a cat yesterday. He was named Werewolf. So his name is Werewolf. We'll never change it. That's his name.
Yeah, he looks like he fits the part too.
Yeah, I'll post a picture in the video somewhere. But basically, if you hear just chaos breaking out around us, that's what that is.
If you hear screams in the night, it's the werewolf.
He's just running around like just destroying shit. I mean, as cats do, you know what I mean? So like he's doing his thing. You know what I mean? So if you're like, what was that crashing sound? It's my like maybe 3-pound baby, like 8-week-old cat. He just running amok here. Ash trying her best to contain him, but much like the Terminator, he can't be bargained with. He can't be reasoned with. You can't control it. And it's going to do what it does. So,
would you call him a Furminator?
Ooh, good one.
Yeah, sorry,
good one. I appreciate that one. All right, I'm going through my notes here, my serial killer ranting notes here. Let's see, just some like I don't know. I try to jot down some things, some little Easter eggs. Your girl Violet. She's in Florida, 1980. Dick Halloran was in Florida, 1980. Did they go, and I've seen this theory, I didn't come up with this, but do you think that maybe Rose and the True Knot were out trying to find Dick and stumbled upon
Violet instead?
Violet by happenstance? Or is that just a weird coincidence or a little Easter egg throwback thing?
I don't know. It did seem kind of... I mean, I guess they kind of jump around the country throughout the movie, so
they have pretty shitty radar. If they couldn't find Dick,
yeah, or Danny,
who's a cook,
yeah,
like you know what I mean, like or Danny, yeah. I mean, it's like guys,
like yeah, clearly if they're still going undetected, there's got to be, it's not like they're hunting all of them to extinction by the sound of it. If they manage to miss Danny and a bunch of other children out in the country.
Yeah, it's all very strange.
In both the book and the movie, like, once again, the True Knot, I really liked that aspect of the story quite a bit. But yeah, I almost did, even though I like it being vague in many parts, like I do wish they kind of like dug in a little deeper on the backstory on some of them, or just like
I wanted to know, yeah,
I
like
wanted
what,
the like
Grandpa
with the
Fleck,
vampire.
like what, yeah, what did he get up to? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, he's
You know
the
what I mean?
oldest of the old, and yeah, I mean, they almost kind of seemed like they were like druid or something, pre.
Yeah, I think it was kind of one of the most disappointing aspects for me was the True Knot, where I thought, I thought Crow Daddy was great. It's the gentleman who played the like Native American character in Westworld. That incredible, crazy episode from season 2. He plays Crow Daddy. You got Rebecca Ferguson running around. She did incredible. It's like, give me as much Rebecca Ferguson as you want to put on film. Like, that's fine. Like, you could have just made a movie where she's just sitting still.
Yeah,
like, I'd watch that.
She's always compelling.
Yeah, the girl that was Snakebite Andy, I thought she was great.
Yeah.
Thought she was very sociopathic and intense, and I liked the whole kind of abduction / recruitment scene.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty close to the book. Pretty interesting, but yeah, they just don't go into Grandpa Fleck. They don't go into, was it Bobby the Chink, or what was his name?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Jimmy Numbers, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
they all had fun names. You know?
Yeah, they dropped a lot of, I don't know if they're supposed to be those characters. There's just a bunch of the True Knot that are kind of like extras in the movie. Like
they don't have speaking roles,
Yeah.
right? They're just kind of,
it's like vampire red
you know.
shirts. Like you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I guess they're gonna get killed at some point because I'm not really
Yeah.
getting to know these people.
It sucks because in the book, they were kind of some of the most fun, because you start to kind of believe, like, okay, there's this weird cabal of these kind of semi-immortal vampire types.
Mm-hmm.
And how do they, like, okay, they got one guy who's a hacker, and then they got one guy that's like a doctor, and they got one guy that, you know what I mean, can do this and do that. They have different powers, they have different abilities, but like they're practical things, right? So it's like they find Abra not through some insane radar.
Mm-hmm.
They just figure it out like a normal person would, where they say, okay, here's a weird disturbance. Okay, so here's girls that match a profile. Okay, they hack into the high school records and find her that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then to at least narrow the search. You know what I mean? So they just, it's a little bit more believable in a way. You know what I mean? Of like how these guys could do it. They have incredible wealth. They have
You almost
a
kind
lot of pull.
relate to them. Aside if it weren't for them horribly butchering children, you'd almost like them. You know what I mean? Like they're
Well, it's interesting to hear, like you said, Interview the Vampire style of like, well, how do you keep, and Stephen King went into this with like Salem's Lot,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like how do you kind of continue a life like over and over again, where you're the descendant of some so and so, and all the legality mumbo jumbo, right? It's kind of interesting. I don't know, like how would you do it? Like if you were an immortal, like Highlander style.
Yeah, you got to create a new identity.
Yeah, man.
Like,
oh my god, how
years or
tedious.
something. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you got to figure something out. You look great for being 80 years old. Oh, thanks, dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Hey, shit, it's time for another one, But I don't know, man. The True Knot, I was a little bit bummed out about. The whole subplot with, and going back, let's dive into kind of the murder scene. Is it Trevor Bradley? Bradley Trevor is the baseball boy.
I thought that was the Room kid. That's his character.
Well,
name.
that's the character name.
Yeah.
And then what's his name in real life? The kid from Room.
I just forgot.
Chambly?
Jacob
Tremblay?
Jacob Tremblay, yes.
Oh, there you go. I mean, it was like I don't know. Was this supposed to be like a secret or something that he was in this? I don't understand why you wouldn't
had him
have
listed on the cast, but they wouldn't list what his character name was.
I just don't understand. Well, like what could it's. I don't understand
why keep that character under. It's not like he's Pennywise or something.
It's. Well, didn't he win like an Oscar?
Yeah,
wasn't he nominated for an Oscar? Like you can't.
Yeah.
I don't understand
well,
the
if
thinking.
anything, I would try to highlight that fact because
Well, did they not want to kind of get into it with,
I
The Abra girl is the star and not him, and vice versa or something? I don't
I don't
know.
know. I mean, it just sounds like poor marketing to me. And like, it's
Well, there
not
you
like
go.
people are unfamiliar with him as an actor. His character is getting put like between you know Room and I feel like he's the go-to child actor for Child in Peril or saying
I feel
things you
like
shouldn't
your
say.
mind didn't immediately go to the Predator.
The Predator is the worst one. Like he, and that's like you could
Did you
tell.
see Good Boys or whatever that was?
No, I didn't. I heard it's
That was
good,
pretty
but
rough.
like that's what I'm saying. Like
Eh.
you hire that kid to say all the dirty words or get involved in situations that are like kind of fucked up because there's like a lesser, smaller crop of kids that would probably be whose parents would be willing to let them do that and everything. So
Well, speaking of fucked up, I mean, as kids being murdered on film go, this is probably up there, right?
I mean, yeah, it's not a huge group, but it's pretty gnarly.
Like apparently, like I was watching like interviews with the cast and stuff, and they were saying like Rebecca Ferguson said, she's like I had to take a minute, I had to go like collect myself because I was like I was having problems. We had people that were like getting triggered
Oh man.
and like going into like regressed childhood memories
Oh
and shit.
no.
Yeah, like she was like, dude, I had to like go take a beat and remember that I'm like a badass and God knows where I trained in London or some shit. And like Tremblay was just like, oh, I'm fine. I'm cared. Give me could I have a soda? Like he was just a day at work for Tremblay.
Wow.
But all the apparently a bunch of the people were like really upset. It was so brutal, like that she had to like go and take like another take, and where they're like real tight on her face, and she's like, yeah, it just like she had to go like gear up for that apparently.
Wow.
But yeah, I was kind of bummed that I mean, I guess it gets scrapped for time, but they kind of abandoned the whole measles kind of subplot.
Yeah, they didn't go into that nearly as
I don't think they get into it at all.
I feel like. Do you think there's like do you think there's a director's cut out there of this that
Nah.
I feel like there's like a lot of movies that if you added 20 minutes of stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor could be actually improved a lot, and I was wondering if this might have had that. Maybe not. It still did feel like yeah, it's just weird because they kept all the essential stuff of the story. Like I think they actually this a lot of the stuff that they cut, like I can see why they cut it, but it is kind of weird because it did kind of feel like it gutted. It kind of watered down some of your favorite parts of the movie.
No, it's weird because in the book, if you read the book, you remember they kind of there's a plot where it's kind of a ticking time bomb motivation kind of thing, right? It drives the story forward. That the True Knot inhales measles from Trevor Bradley, whatever the hell his name is, and as a last, an fu, you know what I mean, kind of is able to get the last laugh in a way where he kind of poisons them, where they're like immortals, but they're not used to battling these diseases and they're not as immune to things. And they talk about how they don't get rube diseases, but here they go, baby. You know what I mean? Like they're good and old, and they start falling to the measles. One by one, they start having outbreaks of measles, and it starts destroying them kind of one by one. So there's a motivation to find Abra quicker because her people are dying like slowly one by one. They're cycling, right? They're going through the process, and there's an impetus to find her quickly because there's hopes that ingesting Abra's steam will save them from kind of this measles outbreak death. So they've, Flanagan decided just kind of, I guess for whatever reason, just kind of cut it, that they had enough motivation. But I thought it added kind of a heightened sense of like, let's get this shit. We got to find this girl fast. You know what I mean? Let's get it.
Yeah, well, it seemed like they kind of like half did it because they showed the the Lurch Twin Peaks guy, the
Uh-huh.
Grandpa Flick. They had that scene of him dying, which is kind of like where the measles really start to come into play in the book. But then it's like most of the rest of them just run off and get killed. When they split off to go find Ewan McGregor.
Well, yeah, that's a huge thing because in the book there's like I think the True Knot is much bigger in the book. Mm-hmm. By maybe I don't know, maybe it's like 15 to 20 people or something like that. And then there's kind of the initial wave that's kind of the hunting party that goes and tries to they try to go capture Abra like in a small group, and that group gets ambushed and shot in the woods by Dan and I think Billy was there, mm-hmm. and Dr. John, right? Dr. John Dalton, and was Abra's dad there as well?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember in the
Abra's
book,
dad
right?
was there.
Right. So there's kind of the first small wave is wiped out in the ambush, and they kind of just decide to have that weird like action-y moment in the film where all of them kind of get wiped out. Like a much smaller group gets wiped out completely by that ambush scene.
Yeah.
Which also just kind of takes it away from the finale, which was a huge part. You know what I mean? Where
they take them all. Yeah, it felt like so many of them got taken out with that, and there was still like a solid 40 minutes left in the movie. Like as badass as Rose was, it kind of felt like she was a little less threatening when everyone got taken out from her side that quickly.
Yeah, no, it looks weird, and I don't know, it didn't feel like it fit in super well. Like suddenly Danny Torrance is like Rambo, you know what I mean? Like just murdering people. Like it's harder to shoot people than it looks.
Oh yeah, and it just was like 5 people with guns versus 2 guys with rifles that. If I was assuming any of them would be a better shot.
If you were a gambling man, would you pick like 100,000, like hundreds of year old people who have had a lot of experience with guns?
Probably
or 2 guys.
Yeah, exactly. 2 schmucks.
I don't know. Jeez.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because that kind of irked me as well. And it felt like that it was, a little too action-y. Like, I think in the book, it's like one guy has a gun. It's a little bit more ramshackle. Like they're definitely planning on trying to tranquilize her.
Someone just like sprays them, right? Yeah, they're trying to abduct her in a park because they believe that she's having a picnic, right? And they just want to abduct her and dose her, right? But they go and they pull the trick, the imaginary trick, right, where they think they're gonna go in and grab her, and then they just start spraying them with guns and everything. Mm. But it's a weird thing. In the film, how they kind of they combined the Billy character. I was like, dude, here we go. Like, of course, like I think in the book, Billy is probably, of course, like the easiest person to kind of just like no one cares, like no one's shedding a tear that the like crotchety old white guy from New England is gonna get changed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was like, I'm trying to remember the actor's name, but
Cliff Curtis.
He's been in a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's Billy? Like, Billy is like
he was a lot less like he didn't really have too much like character to like in the book. It felt like Billy wasn't like that deep of a character, but he like cussed a lot and kind of cracked a joke.
He was kind of fun. Yeah. He was kind of like the old crotchety kind of, but fun, kind of like,
like
down for whatever kind of guy.
Kind of thing or something like that.
Maybe, a little bit, you know what I mean? But it's weird, man. Flanagan just hack and slash this shit. He was like, let's get rid of was it Stacy? Who was the guy that was kind of the his sponsor?
The AA guy that was employing him. I don't know. They kind of combined him with Dan, and Dan plays a much.
They combined him with like that doctor,
yeah.
right? Who kind of gives him the job.
Yeah,
right?
But the doctor is like a much bigger character in the book, and here it's like a Bruce Greenwood cameo, and that's it.
That's it. You know what I mean? So, it was weird how they kind of, Billy became so the doctor and Dan go dig up the baseball boy. Instead, they switch it out with Billy. The sponsor is dropped altogether. He becomes Billy, so Billy is now kind of his de facto like best friend. He goes and digs up the body. He's his sponsor. He's helping him out. You know what I mean?
It's so much like, I think having it spread out over different characters and having the little bit more time in the book makes it a little bit more plausible that I think he saves Billy's life from a heart attack at some point earlier in the book, so they all really believe that he's special. So it's a really big logical leap that even if you're a really good friend, if your friend says, "Hey, help me drive 4 states over to dig up a dead kid," like the Billy's a little too gung ho to like help him out in the movie. I thought he's like hesitant, but like it's like, oh geez, I don't know about that. Like I feel like I would be much more reticent to help out in a situation like that.
Totally, because he proves himself to John the Doctor with the scene that it's still in the movie where he identifies where his lost watch is. Which coincidentally, he's also like Abra Stone's pediatrician, right? So he's heard the story about Abra putting the spoons on the ceiling, and like she plays piano music in the house. She does. She predicts the events of 9/11.
Yeah, that.
Remember that whole thing? You know what I mean?
I was like, I kind of wanted that whole thing to be in the movie. I thought that was a really cool part of the book.
Where they kind of talk about how, in the book they talk about how, like, for whatever reason. Okay, so like this one thing I wasn't sure about. Okay, so now, can they enjoy the death of anyone? Because in the book they make it sound like they went to ground zero at 9/11 to just enjoy, like they're drawn to a place of like massive tragedy, death and suffering.
I feel like
and pain.
It's like a numbers game at that point. Like,
But if you were Danny Torrance or The Shining or whatever, and you're in one of the Twin Towers on 9/11, like, what are you doing?
Well, I mean, maybe not that powerful, but if you had like a bunch of people, because they mention in the book, like Billy's an example, like there's a lot of people that have a very tiny amount of shine.
Yeah, I bet if you had the slimmest amount of shining, you wouldn't be in the goddamn Twin Towers on 9/11.
You never know. I mean,
I'd go for a coffee.
You also probably wouldn't go to a fucking ghost hotel or something, right?
Well, he got dragged there. If I'm Dick O'Halloran, I probably wouldn't work there.
Or another example is like, it seemed to be very much indicated that, like, whatever your shine is, it gets corrupted the older you get. So a lot of people, like, Danny, before he sobers up, like, he's like a piece of shit getting himself into tons of situations he probably shouldn't, even though he has intuition on certain things that, like, leads him good directions. Like, he still makes a lot of bad decisions. So I mean, I don't know. They didn't really, once again, that's like another aspect of the True Knot. A lot of the True Knot stuff, I feel like Stephen King was like, he came up with a really cool name for something, and then you just kind of have to fill in the gaps on some of the backstory. So there's like Steam and the True Knot, and everybody in the True Knot has like a cool name. It's kind of like X-Men rules. Like, Stephen King's good at like coming up with characters and assembling them, and then sometimes I feel like he doesn't know what to do with them to wrap things up. Like,
well, that's the classic Stephen King complaint.
Yeah, he sets up all this great stuff. It's like he loves crafting the D&D game, but not like following through with it or something. But
I agree. One quick one. The girl Violet that gets picked up in the opening scene, she's from the house on the Hill House, right?
Oh, I never put that together, but she looks
which
like
Flanagan directed, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that girl, and I think her actual name is Violet.
Oh wow, that's hilarious.
So they didn't really have to do much. And then let's see here. Do you want to get into kind of the torrent scene in the hotel? You want to get into the whole third act?
Yeah, third act's probably a good thing to tackle, because
I mean, yeah, there's tons of stuff. I don't know. It's like, how much do you want to nitpick? Abra's family. The book, they get into it. Where her whole huge extended family with her Momo, and and stuff like that. It's kind of revealed that they're related.
Yeah.
Dan and Abra are related. Flanagan didn't want to do it. We were reading, a little interview with Flanagan where he says, I don't want it to be Star Wars rules, where everyone's a Skywalker. So he didn't like the choice that King kind of tied everything together, where Abra's grandmother slept with Jack Torrance and had like a love child, right? And their whole like descendants of family is related to the Torrances, and so they're actually related. And I understand it's kind of a weird tie-in that I didn't really buy, and
they definitely dropped it in very late in the book. Is that real? Is that like one of the only reasons the grandma character is in the book?
Well, she's pivotal in the death of Rose in the third act, right? Where with the cancer kiss, right? Yes. So the book is very strange because, and this is what it's like, okay, so Danny works in a hospice. Okay. Conchetta, right? Conchetta,
I think.
Conchetta. She is moved into the hospice. She becomes like, she's
got leukemia or something, I think.
Yeah, right. So she's like 90 something plus years old, but she has cancer. Dan goes and talks to her. They have a meeting. He kind of helps her pass, but she gives him like a kiss, and it's like this weird like cancer death kiss, and that he keeps stored inside of him for some craziness, like the kind of
like the ghosts or whatever.
Yeah, it's like how did you survive this, my man? You know what I mean? Like that's just all bad. And right, they have that scene where he's like, oh, I'm gonna puke. Oh, I can't eat anything but soup. Oh, I can't eat.
Yeah.
And it's like, very strange. So anyway, it's kind of the finale of, How to Kill Rose is basically he just like breathes this death kiss on her and wipes. Is that how that's how they kill Rose, right?
I think
with cancer.
So.
It's not how they kill the rest of the True Knot. Abra kills the rest of the True Knot somehow. With measles or something.
One of them is I think one of them is Danny or someone. No, the ghost of one of the Overlook people gets the girl that's invisible that's gonna ambush them at the end.
Right.
And then
right.
How did they get rid of the rest of them?
I don't know. They something magics.
Yeah. Oh man.
But I don't know. It's neither here nor there. But basically, like the entire True Knot is wiped out with like some weird, like gotcha moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With some sort of fairy disease or and they kind of all just go within seconds, right? Don't they talk about it talks about that in the book where it just like they just kind of like immediately go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like pretty quickly. So, I mean, the third act is just completely different, right? Where in the book, third act takes place in the haunted kind of campground. Now, the Overlook has been burned down. Now it's a campground. It's where the True Knot is holed up at the moment, right? So they're already there, and Abra and Danny go to them. Whereas in the film, he kind of goes back to the Overlook with Abra and then draws Rose to them, right? He kind of picks the battleground. Mm-hmm. And it's like, she's like, why would we go there? If it's dangerous for us, why would we go there? And he's like, well, it's going to be bad for her too. And it's like,
it's probably still going to be pretty bad for you though.
Right.
Yeah, it definitely,
right. So it's like,
it feels like it comes out of nowhere. If you didn't know it was a Shining sequel, it would have felt like very random.
Yeah, and I could tell by the marketing because it was 100% on. You know what I mean? Like it's like shining, hotel, Overlook, shining. Like
patterns.
They have the kid like riding the big wheel. I mean, they did the blood. They did everything. They redid that blood scene.
Yeah, I mean they redid.
Did you notice that?
I think they redid everything by the look. And I gotta hand it to them. They did a pretty good job recreating it. But it is interesting. They probably used almost the same amount of footage of those shots in the trailer because they're not that much in the movie. They're kind of just sprinkled throughout, like really quick cuts of shots that are recreations from the movie. Probably they made it shorter, so you wouldn't focus on the fact that they're recreations as much.
Yeah, I think Flanagan said like at the time like there were like 3 shots that they borrowed, and one of them was the opening where he's like that's Kubrick's where they do the opening, but it's at night where they're or not yeah. So the helicopter, yeah, it's still them. They just CGI'd some snow in there, and they made it at night. But that's his shot and everything. But the blood scene is a new shot.
Yeah.
But all the blocking, you know what I mean? When Rose is going up the stairs and Danny's got the axe, I was like, dude, come on, you know what I mean? Like, and they have the thing where, well, yeah, 2 on the nose with the like. The way that Danny keeps switching his hands, like you'd never do like with a baseball bat, you'd never do. And Wendy is clueless, like she's like switching it back and forth in her hands because she's kind of she's just clueless. She doesn't know what she's doing. But like Danny would never
actually
be like switching a baseball bat back and forth. Like you have a baseball bat like stance, right? Like.
Yeah,
I'm never gonna like. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna try to hit you this way.
It's not like you're hesitant on how.
No, and it's like every time they cut back to Danny, he's like switching the stance like Wendy did. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, who was the actress's name? The poor lady's name?
Shelley Duvall.
Shelley Duvall, man. She's like, clutching it and kind of shifting it, and it's like, hey Dan. Like, no one would do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it just looks so strange. But I thought it was cool. Like, an homage. They block it the same and everything. But
yeah. They did a good job. They did a really good job of recreating a lot of stuff from The Shining. But weirdly, I kept on thinking of that scene from Ready Player One, though, the whole time. Because that's what that whole third act felt like. Where they're like, well, okay, we got to try to... This is our sandbox. We're
like someone, yeah, totally. Someone playing like virtual reality inside of this setting.
Yeah. And it's basically you've got to pay homage to this shot, this shot, this shot, and this shot, and then figure out a way to kind of tie it into this story that you've already crafted.
Totally.
So it definitely does kind of come out of nowhere.
Did you like, the hedge maze kind of thing, or where she's getting like slashed in the legs and stuff? Like, well, I don't know. I didn't know what to make of that.
I didn't like that part of it. Like, I liked the idea of like everyone else's minds are filing cabinets or their cathedrals, but for Danny, it's that maze that his dad was chasing him in. Like, that's so ingrained in his person, and so that was a creative way of working that thing that you obviously have to pay homage to into the story. But like, I didn't like the way they had Abra kind of just the blocking of her just popping out of nowhere and slashing her legs, like, felt very lame to me. Like, I didn't buy it, and it felt very dumb, and I could kind of tell the beats of it. Like, okay, she just slashed her twice, she's gonna grab her now. Like, I feel like I've seen stuff like that in other movies, and it felt kind of out of place. And there was a lot of stuff like, a lot of the Rose showdown stuff at the end felt a little weird because...
Well, I was like, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
Like, what are they going to fist fight?
Yeah.
Are they going to have like like, you know what I mean? Like Cartman versus the psychics showdown?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I was thinking I'm going to watch.
Yeah.
That episode of South Park, where, like, it's like the Sixth Sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where it's like he's making like the scanners noises. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, is that what's going to happen? Like, what are we going to watch?
Yeah, that's the one thing I was never totally clear on, once again, in both the book and the movie, is like, does Rose actually have physical powers? Like, we all know she's like killer telekinetic or whatever, but like I didn't know if she was also like had like physical strength. Like, I don't know how many regular vampire rules apply to her still. So when like she goes up and tries to attack Danny and she doesn't seem to have any fear, she gets him in the leg with the axe, but I think...
But doesn't she eat one to the shoulder?
Like right away, and it's like she doesn't even
I don't know how much steam you just... I know you just took all the steam, but does that mean your shoulders don't?
Yeah, and it's also...
can repel axes now?
Like, you'd think that there's no reason for her to get an injury voluntarily. Like, I guess it's like if it's like she just did a bunch of vampire drugs, maybe she's so messed up she doesn't care. But like, you would think that she would like avoid the axe and then try to stab him. I don't know. Like, it felt
avoid axes at all costs, people, because ask Scatman Carruthers.
Yeah, didn't work out
when they come down. You know what I mean? It's all bad times.
Yeah. But you get to come back as a ghost.
I guess. I mean, were you happy with kind of the weird, like, kind of her death scene, where the Grady twins are pawing at her face and all that?
Oh, actually, I liked her death scene. I liked that imagery. I did not... I think it was not set up at all why suddenly Danny would get possessed by the house and turn into his dad.
I couldn't stand
that. That's really pissed me off. That's when it was like, oh, come on. So
because he's limping and he's got the flannel shirt on and he's got the axe.
It's so, and like, you had to set yourself... And also the eye thing felt lame. Like, that was like, oh, yeah, okay, we just need some shorthand.
He has that moment of clarity.
Yeah,
and he's like, one thing, it was another throwback to the book, I think, where, it was, but where she says, like, I know that's not you, that's not Danny, like, you're wearing a mask, like, like false face, or like, that's something that Danny in the book screams, like, he's like, you're not my dad, false face, you're wearing a mask, you're a mask, okay. You're not my dad, like, that's something that he screams. And so I think that was another little throwback, little connection. But I hated that. I think they wanted to have Danny kind of possessed so that they could kind of do the traditional Shining book ending. Yeah. Right? So it's hard to get him down in that boiler room, like, if he's not possessed, right? So they... in the book, The Shining, famously, like, if you haven't read it, but Jack goes down. Danny has a confrontation with Jack in the full swing of madness, and basically, like, reminds him that, hey, you didn't dump the boiler. The boiler's gonna blow, and so Jack goes like, oh shit. So he like runs down there, and then basically like, like has a moment of clarity and a redemptive moment where he kind of like allows Danny to escape briefly, and then blows the hotel up, basically. He allows it to be blown up, or he blows it up himself. I'm trying to remember.
I think he allows... Yeah, the whole thing just overheats and he explodes, right?
Right. And then in Dr. Sleep, he accelerates the process. You know what I mean? He wakes the hotel up and he does everything, but he kind of like... He basically like... he's trying to turn the knobs, right?
Yeah.
I was confused. I was like, is he trying to turn the knobs to save it or to stop it? To, you know what I mean? To make it worse? I was a little bit confused, but I'm not a boiler expert.
the boiler was like on fire at that point, so I think I assume he had waited long enough to get it to explode.
But like, did you see? I felt like his death was completely senseless.
Oh, absolutely. That is my biggest beef with the changes in the movie, because it just really, really, like, that ending makes sense for Jack Torrance, and that is a great ending, and I don't object to them kind of, like, cutting that part from the book of the first one and inserting it into the movie of the second one, but the whole thing with the book of Dr. Sleep that I really liked is it's a redemption story. It's all about Danny starting from this really low point of all of the terrible things that happened to him in The Shining and learning to use his gift and go forth and use it for good. And in this, like, he just kills himself. Like it feels like almost gives the opposite message that, like his dad, he succumbs to everything that all of his addictions and everything, and it just felt very out of nowhere and unnecessary, and it's
pretty hopeless. It's weird that we would not like the film ending, but we actually prefer. I don't know about you. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I prefer the Stephen King ending.
Yeah, ditto.
To,
actually, because the epilogue of the book is fantastic. The whole thing with him there's a hospice nurse that's is abusing patients, who's kind of an asshole, that Danny almost gets into a fight with early on in the book, almost rats him out and everything. And then, to tie it together at the end of the Stephen King book, that nurse gets hit by a car and is on his deathbed, and Danny goes and
right, and he's like grievously injured, right? Like he can barely breathe, like he's mutilated, and I don't know why he's not in an emergency room. Yeah. Like why the hell is he there?
I think they say something about like there's a traffic accident, so the hospitals are inoperable.
Oh, they come up with some yeah. But basically, right. So it's like it shows like Danny, this is the guy, this orderly kind of asshole, lazy, abusive orderly is the one that nicknamed him Dr. Sleep, right?
Right, yeah.
So he's the one he mockingly calls him Dr. Sleep. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he calls Danny Dr. Sleep. And yeah, he was Danny finds bruises on one of the kind of old, older patients, they're all a little bit older, right? So, but they almost get into a fight and come to blows over it. And they're not chummy like coworkers. But at the very end, Danny is the one that's holding his hand, helping this man like pass over and die. And that's how the story ends. You know what I mean? So, it was a really, I love the ending of the book. You know what I mean? Where you believe that he's out there helping people, in the worst moments of their life. A lot of these people are dying, broken and poor and alone, and their families are God knows where, if they even have families. But this guy is there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's a great story, and then just to kind of kill him off in the film, and then have the Shelley Duvall actress stand in, come in, and then with the I thought that was just a little strange. I don't know if is he trying to tell us that Danny is. That did Shelley Duvall come back?
Well, I think it's like he's at peace
is it
with
young
his
Anakin
mom.
Skywalker type shit? You know what I mean? Where it's like Force Ghost, where he transforms into his former self. Like, I don't know. It was very strange. Was that? Did Shelley Duvall was she part of the hotel now? You know what I mean? It's like what are you trying to explain here? By having that imagery, you know what I mean?
I think it's just like some stock, he's with his mom now, so he's doing fine, even though he's about to burn up and die a horrible, painful
It's like
death.
all the hospice people are like, I see my wife. Yeah. Danny, he sees his mom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you should see that toddler that you almost, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that's who you see at the end of your life. Dee Dee, right?
Dee Dee, yep. Dee Dee and the baby with the cocaine. Yeah, they cut that shit down too. That was like
it was pretty damn creepy. Yeah. With the dead baby and everything.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Let's see here. Let me dig through my serial killer notes. I mean, there's so much stuff. You know what I mean? Like there's. Let me go through my notes here. The chalkboard never says red rum in the book. Is that true?
I think it does.
I don't remember
once.
It does. I don't remember it in the book.
I could be wrong, but I think it does once.
All right. Well, Danny Lloyd, the original Danny Torrance, he's the guy in the Little League game that kind of says like, "Oh, number 19 or 17 or whatever, he's gonna have a big game." Mm-hmm. Fun throwback for you or no?
Wait. So. What it is?
The actor who plays Danny Torrance in The Shining.
Oh, really? That
as an adult, yeah, he's in the Dr. Sleep.
I did not.
He had such a great time doing Stanley Kubrick's film that he never acted again.
I was gonna say, isn't he like a school teacher or something like that? Now?
Yeah, like he was like, you know what? Oh, how many lives did Stanley Kubrick ruin with this movie?
I mean, Shelley Duvall ain't never been the same since then.
Did she work after that?
I'm trying to remember.
When did she do Popeye? Is that after?
That was definitely before. But and yeah, she's had a pretty good career since then. But like, I think she said that like that movie kind of ruined her.
She had like a nervous breakdown, I think, during it. Right?
Yeah, and she always. I mean, I don't know if she just kind of got typecast, but it always seemed like she was like always very kind of just like skittish after that.
I would be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, you could never get away with that now. Like, there's no way.
Oh no! Well, I mean,
like, where was SAG? Was Screen Actors Guild, or who protects these people?
I mean, in the '80s, I feel like if you're one of the biggest filmmakers around, and The Shining was a very small crew and very secretive production, so I that's the one thing. That's like the main reason why I think everyone doesn't have any expectations for this to truly have that Shining feel, because you can't get away with so many of the things that they got away with back in the 1980 or whenever that movie came out, because just the amount of time like the crossfades took, or the length of some of those like steady cam shots and everything like that. Like, a movie like this has too much plot, and you can't risk losing audiences that have low attention spans with something as weird as that. So I kind of missed that. Like, I wish that if money wasn't an object, you could really just go balls to the wall with some of that crazy Kubrick stuff. But really, all you can do is just kind of tip your hat towards it.
There you go. One last thing, I guess, that we didn't get to. How did you feel about the
Henry Thomas?
Henry Thomas as Jack Torrance.
Yeah.
Did you like it? Did you hate it? I was like, what are we doing? I mean,
I kept on wondering if they were going to show him or not, and
no, well, it had to happen,
yeah.
right? And I was like, oh God, it's just so cringy to me, and like, I couldn't identify who he was. Like, if you gave me 1,000 guesses, I would never have guessed it. He's the dad from Haunting on Hill House. He's the
well, also, I mean, E.T.
Another Flanagan, huh?
He's the kid from E.T.
He's the kid from E.T. And he's
and he was also he was the creepy dad in Gerald's Game. So I almost wonder if Flanagan cast him because he's getting typecast in his projects as the terrible father.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
But did you like it? Did you not?
So I loved the concept. I thought the makeup was actually okay, and I think the fact that they didn't show him too much, tried to sell it. I kind of wish I was like, you're clearly just trying to make him look like Jack Nicholson. So if that was the case, I kind of wish that he went a little bit more into a Jack Nicholson impression when he was talking, because he did read more like he was clearly trying. I felt like Henry Thomas was like, I'm not going to try to do a Jack Nicholson performance. I'm just going to, speak normally and everything. And
I'm going to talk like a normal human being. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I kind of wish like the lines he was saying was great, but I kept on looking at it like, oh man, I wish you put a little Nicholson on that line. You know what I mean? Like, growl.
Can you just de-age Nicholson? What is he? How much money does he want?
I mean, dude, he's. I don't think he's. I think
he's not working anymore.
He doesn't. He said he was like having trouble remembering lines.
Just shout out the lines for him.
At this point,
you know what I mean? Like,
you just you go full CG. You get a voice impressionist.
How crazy would it have been? Just no de-aging.
Oh, you just get Nicholson
roll out
back,
Jack, and be like, hey, why don't we put this red coat on you and this bow tie, and let's just get weird, man. You know what I mean? Let's see what we got. Just let it happen. Because that would have been better than what we got. We got some guy. Oh, is that Jack? Is that who am I? Because Flanagan didn't want to do. We were reading earlier. He's done some interviews. He didn't want to do an impersonator. He didn't want to do a CGI. Mm. He didn't want to do a Grand Moff Tarkin. You know what I mean? I would have to admit that I don't care how good you are and how Samuel L. Jackson can look 20, 30 years younger. Like, I feel like that would have been too jarring for me in this movie. Like, I could buy it in a Star Wars where there's already a lot of CGI. And granted, it's not like this movie didn't have any CGI, but like, the movie's already going into weird territory by suddenly introducing the Overlook, and if you suddenly turned in like a fucking Uncanny Valley Jack Nicholson, like, you totally would have lost the audience immediately. Like I don't think what they did was totally successful, but I like the concept of it. Like, it just sucks that you couldn't, get a time machine. It didn't get executed a little bit better.
Yeah,
and because Flanagan said that Stephen King did not want to do the whole revised third act where they go back to the Overlook. He thought it was a shitty thing to do because he burned it down. You know what I mean? So he's like, yeah, I don't want you to make a movie about how this thing that I burned down is just suddenly back. And they pitched him on this meeting of Danny Torrance and Jack is back as the ghost bartender, and that conversation. That is what got Stephen King's approval to go ahead with this kind of super divergent, you know what I mean, kind of move. And then you make it, and it's like, like it could have been anybody, you know what I mean? I don't know. It was so weird, and it's so funny that like the fact that you don't want someone to sound like Jack Nicholson,
but you make him look.
But well, yeah, you got to make him look like him. But it's like it makes you think. It's like if you don't want someone to do a Jack Nicholson, then that means that there is such a thing as just the Jack Nicholson thing. Mm-hmm. Does that make him the worst actor of all time or the best actor of all time? Where it's like, does he play characters or is he just Jack Nicholson in every movie? You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know. I feel like if you're going by those rules, like, what about Jeff Goldblum? Like so many
Goldblum. Yeah. Who else? Bruce Willis is one, right?
Well, like
Stallone.
It's like that's honestly
Schwarzenegger.
Being good and being somebody that gets known for something. Like, you know, sometimes I think a lot of there's less celebrities these days that are as big as a lot of those people, but a lot of them figured out like, hey, if I have this kind of signature thing, style of line reading, I'll get recognized. I think that's why Shatner did his infamously terrible acting, is like he was like, yes, I know I sound terrible, but you're gonna fucking remember me when you leave. And it works, you know, like
so you'd rather be remembered poorly than forgotten.
I mean,
like,
yeah,
for doing
it's like
well.
If you keep on doing one thing long enough, you can parlay that into a hugely successful career. I just.
Well, we're gonna test that theory, my friend, as we go through for the next 50 years recording these podcasts.
We're gonna hit gold one day. You'll see.
Yeah, I think podcasts like 3,000. You know, what I mean, we'll just be
we'll
incredibly successful.
We'll find that little oil well of clicks or whatever. We'll be like fucking
click on it, baby.
You know, Daniel Day-Lewis and There Will Be Blood,
just falling down a goddamn mine shaft and breaking our femurs, you know, dragging our dicks through the dirt for 30 miles until we slam a fistful of gold on some asshole's counter.
Yes. It's going to be for something terrible. Like, we're going to do, like, Angry Birds 3 or something, and it'll, you know, get 1 million views.
If it doesn't work out, I'm just going to pivot to cat content, my man.
Hey, you can never go wrong. You got a cat, I got a cat. Let's put our cats together.
Why aren't the cats on film right now?
I don't know, man. They're contract,
money on the table.
Contract negotiations.
You talk to your cat, I'll talk to mine. We'll see what we can make.
Yeah.
But anything else, man? You know what I mean? There's a lot of I don't know. I have ramblings written down. There's so many differences. You know how Jack. You know how he kind of helps in the death of Rose at the end. Does he wave in the book? Right? Does he? Yeah, he kind of like waves at Danny. Right?
Surprisingly, much less of a presence. I mean, like I was surprised that like he never really shows up in the book except for like a distant wave, which is like kind of cliche and like that's like kind of a trope or whatever, but it's still kind of nice in the book. Yeah, that's all you need, just a sprinkling.
Just a sprinkling, you know what I mean? Just a little nod,
yeah,
you know what I mean, here and there. But there you go. I mean, there's so, I mean, you know, guys, The Shining could be its own 3-hour podcast of everything that's different, but it's been done to death. You know what I mean? Like there's a million videos out there explaining every little difference, and 237 versus 217 and blah blah blah, and you know what I mean? It's like there's a million of them. Dr. Sleep is no different. You know what I mean? There's a ton. So
yeah.
You know, we try to get to as many as we can. Billy, they kill Billy. She just snake bite Andy. Tells him to blow his head off.
That was actually a great scene. You know, especially since Billy's such a useless character in this one. I was like, okay, at least you got rid of him in a fun way.
Oh, brutal. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's kind of adorable old man, trying to do a cartwheel in the book. You know what I mean? He's just, hey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I don't know. A million little differences here and there. You know what I mean? It is what it is. I really enjoyed the film as a whole. I thought it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
The strongest adaptation, I don't think so. But, an enjoyable film. We had an insane woman who... Oh, the cat is climbing the blinds. Ash is
Heard you talking about him.
Yep, there he is. Hey, buddy. He's coming over. We had an insane baby crying the entire film.
Oh, fun.
I had these two asshole guys sitting on my right that were just talking through the entire movie.
No.
And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why? Like, what are you here for, dude?
Yeah, there was some
just shut up.
Chick on her phone, thank God she stopped before the movie actually started, but she made it through 2 or 3 trailers just talking loudly on her phone.
Oh, wow. That is murder talk. You know what I mean? What else? I'm reading now. I'm not going to put this on you, but I'm reading. I jumped right in, ass over tea kettle, into. I Heard You Paint Houses.
Oh man, dude, that's a month away.
we got. When is it? When does it hit Netflix?
I think
The Irishman, 27th or something. Thanksgiving-ish, right? All right, I'm gonna pound on it, man. You know what I mean? I'm pounding on it. I'm gonna find out what happened to Jimmy Hoffa.
I'm definitely watching that movie anyways, and I will definitely talk about it. I'll have to see. Isn't that a long book too?
I'm gonna do my damnedest.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I think and I'm not gonna put it on you. You don't have to worry about it. I'm gonna try to read the book, so that we can kind of figure out what the hell is going on. Because I'll be honest with you, every Scorsese Italian mob movie, I get lost in the minutia of the characters. You know what I mean? Jimmy the Hat and
Frankie the Fish,
Fat
Mikey
Frankie,
the
and
Yeah.
And I'm already learning a lot of lingo and stuff. It's pretty cool. The book is if someone goes to Australia, that means they got put down under, and you know what I mean. So it's if you say oh, so and so's got to take a trip to Australia, they're getting whacked,
dirt
bro.
nap.
So I'm learning all the lingo, so Scorsese isn't gonna confuse my ass this time. You know what I mean? But I love those films, but damn, bro, talking about the Gambino family in Milwaukee and blah blah blah. Yeah, all the insane narration scenes in Casino and Goodfellas, explaining how the mob works and stuff. I was
it sounds like
it
sounds like a coked up Joe Pesci explaining to you his family tree, which it basically is. So that's kind of the fun of it, right? But yeah, it's I guess you can actually take in the information now.
Yeah. So, well, there you go. So that one's coming out. Look out for that one in a month. A month-ish from now, whatever. I don't know. But that one's kind of the next book. Yeah, I don't know how many differences there will be, but it'll certainly help our appreciation.
Yeah.
But yeah, any other movies coming out? I don't know, just straight movies. No book tie-ins that we want to talk about. I don't know.
I mean, Oscar season is approaching.
Here we go.
I keep on hearing stuff about that Scarlett Johansson movie, Marriage Story, which I think is also dropping on Netflix. Either late November or early December. But yeah, aside from that... 1917's coming out, probably.
There we go, Sam Mendes.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to be a pretty big Oscar play. Oh, and of course, we definitely have to do something on Uncut Gems whenever that drops.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were going to say Charlie's Angels.
Somehow I think I'll pass on that one.
I might have to put Ash inside of a wheelbarrow and dump her inside of that theater, but she might do a Trash with Ash feature on that one.
You don't think that's going to be an Oscar play? I think that's totally an Oscar play.
No, but I mean Ford versus Ferrari we got coming up here. Might do a little quick review on that. Waves looks kind of fun. Anyway, just keep an eye out. If Ash and I get a wild hair, we'll we'll do some of these kind of quick little reviews.
Yeah, we'll,
you know what I mean?
we'll keep our nose to the ground. There's tons of, and of course, there's always the weird indie that pops up. So I'm sure if something strikes both of our fancies, we're always DTP, just texting each other in the middle
Exactly.
of the night.
We're always down to pod. We're always down to pod. And it doesn't take much to get us to pod these days. You know what I mean? We'll pod at the drop of a hat. We'll even watch a Terminator film. You know what I mean? And and Ash and I did a quick little pod review of that Utter Disappointment. So if you're into that, go click the link somewhere below, and we'll go ahead and explain why that really upset us. But other than that, thank you guys for listening. If you made it through this whole thing, my God, appreciate it. Appreciate ya. But check us out at thedisorderly.com. We're on Twitter at Disorderly Media, Facebook Disorderly ENT. But yeah, click around, subscribe, share it with your friends. We appreciate it. We do, as I said, countless hours of research. We've read spent countless hours reading audiobooks to prepare for these podcasts. So please, the least we only ask for a like. We only a subscribe. You know what I mean? We're reading. We're grown men reading. We appreciate you. But all right, we'll see you next time. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it.
See you. Woo! Shit, man. I was getting nervous there. I was like wondering how much space I had left on this memory card.